Welcome to Simple Succession. I'm Rusty George, and while I've spent years studying church succession, I've also lived it. I followed a founding pastor who built a church from the ground up. I followed a pastor who faithfully led for more than 30 years. I've experienced the excitement, uncertainty, opportunities, and challenges that come when leadership changes hands. Whether you're an outgoing pastor wondering how to finish well, an incoming pastor stepping into a beloved leader's shoes, a board member navigating the process, or a church leader thinking about the future, this podcast is for you. The truth is, succession is one of the most significant moments in the life of a church. Done well, it can preserve legacy, strengthen mission, and position a church for its next season of impact. Done poorly, it can create confusion, division, and years of unnecessary pain. That's why each episode of Simple Succession brings you conversations with leaders who've actually walked through it. You'll hear lessons learned, mistakes made, wisdom gained, and practical insights from churches that have navigated leadership transition firsthand. You may be years away from succession, you may be in the middle of it right now, or you may be wondering if it's time to start the conversation. Wherever you are, don't make the journey alone. Learn from those who've gone before you. Welcome to Simple Succession. All right, well, guys, I'm really grateful you're going to be on this conversation. I've known both of you for a while now. Shan, we go back to college days, and it's just so cool to see what God is doing through you. And you've had a chance now to take over in two different opportunities, basically taking over for legendary pastors. One over in Rocky Mountain Christian Church. Is that the right way to say that?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't think it was community or whatever, but you took over there and were there for over 11 years, which is a great run. That's a long enough time for it to be yours and for the problems you have to fix to be the ones you created.
Yep.
So that you did that faithfully, and now you had an opportunity to take over for a living legend, Cal Jernigan.
Right. Yeah.
Man,
The man, the myth. Yeah.
That's right. And Cal, you've been a guest on the podcast before, and you kind of gave us your insights on, having led for 35 plus years and incredible stuff that you'd seen. And would you just tell us a little bit about, Cal, how long you had been at Central and when you decided, okay, it's time for me to start getting serious about the transition plan for me to retire?
Yeah, I started at Central in 1987 as the head of the youth ministries, which are obviously a much smaller church, much smaller role. And then in 1996, I was asked by Roy Lawson, who was the senior pastor, and the board to consider succeeding him, which I was extremely reluctant to do for lots of reasons. You don't want to follow a guy like Roy, and you're going to be negatively compared and all of that. But worked through all that. Became the senior pastor. There was an interim period of about 2.5 years. So in 1999, the beginning of that year, I took over and then continued until I handed it over to Shan, which was in April of 2025. So that's kind of the role there.
Wow.
But when I look at it, as I reflect back on it, I think what started to happen, we had the highlight, the absolute apex of my experience as a leader at Central was in 2019, which is when the church celebrated its 60th anniversary. We had the most glorious event. We brought all of our campuses together, Chasefield, and had Roy back, and he spoke, I spoke, and we talked about the past, present, and the future. It was, again, the late 2019 fantastic experience at the stadium, culminated with a fireworks show. It was awesome. That was followed by the best Christmas I think we'd ever had up to that point, which was filmed in New York City and in Central Park and in Rockefeller Center, pre-filmed. And it was just, I was riding as high. I led into 2020 with an incredible series called 2020 Vision about where we're going to go from here. And absolutely none of that has come to pass. So I was flying far more blinded than I knew I was. But anyway, so what happened is obviously every church went through the pandemic, but beginning with the pandemic, there was just a series of things which I think every church went through. And again, real quick, everyone through the pandemic, got to sort that out. Everyone went through the George Floyd, got to sort that out. Everyone went through the Trump, Biden debacle of, was it stolen? Everyone went through, the 2020 financial crisis. Every church leader had to deal with that. I also think every church leader had to deal with just the whole deconstruction that followed that. Every one of us, if you were a senior leader in those years following, 2020 following, I just think it was an incredibly stressful, strain-filled era of leading. In our situation, we had a couple of other ones that compounded it. We had a potential successor that was going to take my role, and we found out some things about his involvement, character issues that was just horrific to deal with. And then I had some personnel issues. I had really strong issues I had to deal with. You start knowing you're done when you're spending most of your time on your back sucking for wind on the mat instead of standing strong and fighting the battle. I just felt like it was just becoming just overwhelming, and you can feel your spirit weakening, where you just go, I'm my age, my role, and there's a whole nother issue. I think sometimes we think we can lead a major organization for years and years on end. And I think it wears on you. I think it takes its toll, and I don't think we ever want to admit it. But if you're the president of the United States, which is not the same role, but if you're the president, you got 4 years to make it happen, and 8 if you're lucky. And let's hope it's the whole system doesn't change. But anyway, you have a certain amount of time to get it done. But in the ministry, we can go 30, 40 years and feel like we still a fresh horse, in the race. And I just had to look at myself and just be honest and just go, I'm not a fresh horse. I'm getting tired. It's taking its toll. And so somewhere in those years, you just start going, I just can't do this forever. I gave the church an understanding, the board, the absolute longest I felt like I can do this without doing irreparable harm to the church, which is a whole other issue. It would be March of 2027. But when that successor that I just told you about, when that thing kind of crashed and burned, it put everything on a fast track now, because we had a 5-year plan that we were going to work. It was going to succeed in that, 2027. And then you start realizing we don't have time. We cannot mess around with this. So we got to get really serious about it. So I did my annual sabbatical study leave, came back and just said, this is the number one item we got to deal with. And that led to conversations with Shan. That led to his coming on our staff and the rest of that story. But I think that in my spirit, I knew if I don't proactively make this move, what's going to happen is it's going to be made for me by the leadership and by staff, just feeling like, God, this guy's just not leading like he used to. I knew I could not continue to lead like I had.
You used a line there, Cal, that I think I really want to drill down on, because you said, I will do irreparable harm. And I thought you were going to say to yourself, your physical health, your marriage, your family, but rather you said to the church. Tell me what that might have looked like. And you might have even seen some of that happen. I know we've seen some guys, they stay too long and they think, I gotta break it even though it's fixed, just so I have something to do. What did that look like? And maybe you could foresee, if I stay too long, I will probably do this and it's going to ruin everything.
Well, I would answer that by saying we've all seen people who stay too long. And the last thing I would ever want would be to be asked off the staff, where people just have to go, somebody's got to cop to him. I personally, that would devastate me. That did not happen. I did not feel in any way pressured out. I didn't, there was no push. But I think what happens is you start looking at things, and I'll give you a really concrete example of this, and it's relative to this conversation. Guys, I have zero interest in social media. Zero. Like, I have no social media accounts. Don't want them. I'm not interested in them. But obviously, in this day and age, to be a leader of a multi-site megachurch, you got to be willing to, invest yourself and put some time in that sort of. And I'm just going, I don't want to. It's not me. And so you have somebody else writing for you and doing that. And then, people figure that's not him. And so you start
Hmm.
realizing music could be another one. You just get to where, can we bring Maranatha back? The good old days. What are we doing with all this new stuff? And you're old school, and I'm old school, and so those sort of things, you just start looking at it. And then another thing I started realizing was when I was younger, I had a lot of contacts with young people that you can invite on your staff. As I got older, I started to realize all the people I know are senior leaders.
Yeah.
That's all I know. I don't know
Yeah.
anybody. I'm not rubbing shoulders with anyone. You start realizing that somebody's going to start making a decision whether they're going to come on your staff based on how long are you going to be there. And in your heart, I'm not going to do this for another 20 years. So I
Right.
think all those factors start, kind of piling in, and you just start going, if I stay here, I will have a job that eventually someone's going to go, he should not have, but I'm going to hurt the church. That's what I meant by that.
I
They,
love
and,
that
and,
line.
and they need young leadership.
I love that line. Somebody needs to talk to him. Who's it gonna be? Who are we sending in there with a rope around their waist?
Cal,
Um,
you joke around about I'm old school. You might be old school in some things. You're not old school in leadership, and I really appreciate Rusty. We were at a conference at a local church. It was actually a large conference at a local church here in Phoenix, holds every year, and we did a workshop. And I loved Cal got up and we did it together, but he launched things and did the first 30, 40 minutes, and started off with this idea of, as a lead pastor, you have to ask yourself in a succession plan, do you want your successor to succeed? Like,
mhm.
do you want them to succeed and succeed past you? Do you want the church to go further? You
Mm.
really have to ask yourself that question. And I think, in my standpoint, man, I've followed two guys who wanted the church to succeed more with me than even with them. And I think that's where, Cal, that's the
Yeah.
motivation for you that I've seen, that was like, well, hey, no, we've got to move this ball faster. We've got to step into this plan and push it further and get to that date faster. And I think that's been the motive that I've seen, and it's just created such a healthy just context for the church, the board, me, all of it.
That's that's well said, and I appreciate you pointing that out. That's Cal's nature. So Sean, I want to ask you this: you did a transition. You took over for a great leader in a great church, and you'd accomplished it, and you're cruising along, and now you have an opportunity to do it again. Was there something in you that? Well, let me just say it this way: why? Why would you want to do that again?
Rusty was interesting. I mean, my situation in Colorado at Rocky, it was a great situation. I'd been at the church that planted Rocky for 8.5 years before that,
Mm,
and loved Colorado. It's all my kids had ever known.
hmm.
I'd known Cal for about 15, 16 of those years, and we were good
Mm,
friends. And so there was nothing in me that was looking to leave Colorado. Like, I was happy, relationships, even stepping into, COVID was past, and we were stepping back into the vision that we had kind of had a similar situation in 2019. We were like, hey, here's where we're going, here's what we're trying to accomplish. And then 2020 hits. We had regained that momentum, and we were kind of on the road heading that direction. But I don't know. I just had this stirring in my spirit. I had a young guy that was on staff that was my second communicator. He was a exec of mine, and he was a second communicator, and he's super talented. And I don't know what God was doing, but he just started working on my heart, going, one of you guys is probably gonna leave.
wow.
Because of his talent, I was looking at that going, Matt's incredible. He's gonna do a great job. I thought it would be him. 'Cause
Hmm.
that's usually how it goes, is the young guy leaves. But I took a book. It was by Jamie Winship. It's called Living Fearless. And I
Hmm.
went on vacation. I was with my wife, and I started working through this book. And in God, just it's a book that really has a lot to do with identity. And I started working through and just realizing, hey, this leading change and this transition thing, it's something I've done beyond just being a senior pastor. It's what I've done in every youth ministry, every discipleship ministry, campus ministry that I've done. It's been that kind of leading change. And that's something that I do. Had no idea Cal was, we weren't talking about this. I knew he was thinking about transition. I called him up and said, hey, I've had a couple churches call, and and I don't know what's going on, but I just kind of wonder, God, what are you doing?
Hmm.
And we just had a conversation. You know how God does. It just led from there. And so why do it again? I was not looking to do it again because it was not easy. And Rocky, when I went into it, Alan was an incredible leader, but he was an evangelist, and the church had gone through just some things that were outside of his control. And
Yeah.
but when I walked in, man, the staff was unhealthy, in shambles, not doing well. My first 3 or 4 years, I was like, "What am I doing? Why did I do
Right.
this?" Now, I was not looking to go into that and do it again, but, sometimes God just leads and he says, "Hey, this is what your gifting is. This is what you do." Matt's more set for the next 10 years at Rocky to lead that forward, and I think I need you to go do this. And
Wow.
it was pretty obvious, and it's been a great transition. Love it. And I do love that this second time around, it was a healthier situation. Like
Hmm.
healthy, church is healthy and ready. A church that's always been focused on growth, excited about the future, and so it's been a really fun ride.
Cal, what role did the elders play in basically choosing Sean and helping through this process? Obviously, you already knew him; you had a relationship with him. Some people are going to be watching this or listening to this thinking, "Okay, well, my elders think they need to make the call. I think I need to make the call." What is it you've learned in just kind of who's in on that conversation?
Yeah, this is going to be probably a little controversial. I was very clear with the board that the next senior pastor needs to be chosen by them, not me. And so right there, there's and you go, why? Because I can set this thing up in such a way that I will still have ridiculous control and be able to continue to work through somebody that I put there that you just know this person's going to defer and they're going to listen to you and you're going to and I've seen that model and I'm not going to name names, but it's incredibly unhealthy in my opinion. So I basically said, look, I will help you. I will guide you in this. I'll give you input. I'll do everything I can do to make this successful. I'll speak up if I feel like we're way off track. But at
Hmm.
the end of the day, you have to choose the person that you want to go into the future with because I won't be the leader here. And if you choose well, fantastic. Everyone wins. If you choose poorly, you have to own the fact that you chose that. I didn't give you that choice. Now, with that said, and I would parallel that, and then again, unpopular. I, I hope I don't die before my wife. I'm not like looking forward to dying, but if I do and she remarries, I should not pick the guy. I'm just saying, you know, I think she should pick the guy and not go, hey, well, I arranged all this before I left. And basically, what I did was I said, here, I'm going to give you some guys that I think you need to look at. That's what I did. And our HR department worked with me on this. Here's some people that I really think you need to consider that I think would do a great job. Any one of them would lead well. And then I gave them access to these guys in terms of here's how you can watch them, here's how you can listen to them, and then we basically had a task force that went out to go research some choices. And then what I did was I said, here's what I would suggest you do is follow these guys and then rate them as you think they would be the best leadership for the future for Central. So give them a score, put them in an order, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about where you are on each of these guys. Now I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this very confidently and very outspokenly. Sean was my choice. End of sentence. There was no question. But I didn't feel like if I tell them Sean is my choice, that I gave them a choice because they would go, then Sean's our guy. And I just think I had that kind of relationship. And I think it's very easy for them to go, well, if he's comfortable, you're comfortable with him, we're comfortable with him. So I said, you got to come back and put these in the order. To my amazement and absolute utter delight, every single one of them ranked Sean number one. So I got to sit there with the smirk on my face going, "You guys are awesome because you figured it out." And then I said, "Okay, so are you guys comfortable with me? I'll contact Sean. We'll see if we can just start this process." And they're going, "Please contact Sean." Sean, I don't know, man, that they picked you. No, but I did have to say to Sean constantly, I go, "Sean, I just need you to understand at the end of the day, I don't have the final say on this. This is not me setting my friend up.
Yeah.
And, so if it doesn't work out, you need to understand, I mean, if it goes well, it's great. If it doesn't go well, I just need you to know I didn't I didn't sabotage you. I didn't, but you're going to have to carry your own leadership into this deal.
Right.
And they're going to have to make the call. And so, and obviously they did great. He's done fantastic since he's been here. So it worked out really, really well. And I got to tell that story to the congregation. And I did tell them Sean was my choice, but I did not divulge that until after the fact.
Let me interrupt for just a moment. If succession is on the horizon for your church, let me help you. Just go to PastorRustyGeorge.com and you can get my free guide. I followed two legends, 6 succession lessons I learned the hard way, plus a succession readiness assessment to help you discover where your church stands today. Both free resources. Just go to PastorRustyGeorge.com to get these. Okay, back to our conversation. What a great story. And I know that, man, in the moments that Shan, you feel like you're overwhelmed or what did I do? Which everybody has those kind of moments. That story right there has got to be so encouraging to you as, hey, God was in this. This wasn't just me wanting to move out to Phoenix, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I feel like it's been confirmed all the way through. And I think Cal has lived out in the last 2 years, everything everything he said. So that whole idea of just, do I want my successor to succeed? He lived that out. Every date that has been said, it has like when they set a date and say, here's the date, they stuck to it. The only thing that they changed is there were some things that were going really well. So there were some dates they moved up, but there was never anything that was delayed. I've heard numerous, transition announcements where it's ambiguous of, hey, this person's coming in, they're going to be here on this date and we're going to work through, it's about the next 6, 9, we'll see. No, Cal was like, this is the date, April 18th, 2025. This is the date that Sean will step in and be the lead pastor and I will step out. And he was also incredibly specific on what my role would be while I was leading before then. So while I was an exec, and what his role would be. This would not be a co-lead pastor. This would be Cal is leading. I'm helping teach. I'm overseeing the campus pastors and this portion of ministry. And then as soon as that date happens, Cal will retire and Sean will step in. And it went exactly the way they planned. I mean, meticulously talking through all of the conversations, not just about what I was going to do, but what Cal was going to do, then what Cal was going to do when he stepped out, and how long of a time frame that would be. I mean, it was meticulously planned. Going back to the board, Rusty, here's an interesting observation for me. I don't know what your observation is. I think actually the choosing of the next lead pastor, that's not an easy thing, but there's so much help with that. And I think Cal's such a great leader. You're such a great, people who are in those positions, you kind of know how to help lead the board through, even if they're making the decision. What I think they don't know how to do is the post choosing the person. And they do not know how to treat the lead pastor. My experience has been how to honor him, because you can't sit there as the outgoing lead pastor and say, hey guys, this is going to be really helpful for Sean if you do these things for me, right? It's not a little self-serving. And I've noticed, man, both boards have been fantastic. They've had such great hearts, but they've not understood what it means to actually honor a person like Cal and Alan going out after 29 years of ministry for one, 34 or 6 years of ministry for the other. I think it was 38 actually. Sorry, 38 years.
You see what you're doing to me? See what you're doing to me? You're minimizing me right now.
You're already minimizing
this is
the
the
legacy
problem,
of
Rusty.
Cal.
This is what I've dealt with.
But I really believe that the level at which they're going to honor me coming in is the level at which we, the board, myself, the staff, honor the outgoing senior pastor. And they had no idea. Neither group had any idea how to do it. They had great hearts, but man, we got them. The first time I did this, I got connected with John Walker, a couple other lead pastors of churches much larger than ours that have been through this, to be able to say, do not forget this. You celebrate this way. Gifts are important. How you treat the spouse of the outgoing lead pastor is incredibly important. All of those things. Then when I came in here, I had some experience, but still got them to talk to some other people. So we made sure in this context with Cal and the leadership that we honor him well. And they did a fantastic job.
They did. I could never have expected what they did, the way they took care of our family. And again, to Sean's credit, it was over the top. Let me comment on a couple of things here, though. One of the things that was really good about the way this worked out is Sean have been a part of a group that I was involved with for, again, these, and I don't know the number, say 15 years, maybe not, somewhere in that ballpark. He knew Central. He knew Central's issues years and years and years ago. He knew what I was working through. He knew the challenges. So he didn't come into this thing blind, like, well, we'll dive in, we'll figure it out. In our conversations, I said, here's exactly what I think we have going for us. Here's exactly what I think you're going to have to face. And my whole thing has always been, there's a reason, which I don't have time to go into a story, but I was severely misled one time in my life when I was in a transition, and flat out lied to. And once you've agreed to come and then you find out what you were lied to, there's no win in that. It's just a lot of work you got to work through and a lot of issues you got to resolve. It's just a difficult thing. So I've always been on the other side of that after that event, which I'm going to spell this out as clearly as I can spell this out. And so, like, even when he said he's leading a mega church, he's been very successful. Why would I ask him to come onto my staff, and take my role if I don't promise him that he'll have that role? Like,
Hmm.
who in their right mind would step out of a winning situation into this
Mhm.
situation and go, well, gosh, I hope it works out. And that is very common. That's very common. That,
Right.
exactly as Sean said. Well, we'll see how it goes. And then the senior pastor starts having, these second thoughts. I'm not really ready to retire, and I just felt like if I'm going to ask Sean to leave what he's leading, of which he's doing very, very well, does not need to leave. If he's going to do that, I can't play around with his life. And so it was very clear. You come, I will announce you on this day. I will step out on that day, and that is what we did. And it just creates, a whole lot of trust. And
Mhm.
I would just hate to be the guy on the receiving end of a vague promise of, somehow we'll work this out. And
Yeah.
I would not leave a situation where I felt like I was doing very well. I had my feet, my roots were established, my feet were on the ground, and I wouldn't leave that to go sort of maybe someday be the leader of another deal. I just wouldn't do that. It'd be, no, we're going to be really clear.
I
And
I
the other,
love that. I love that clarification. Good.
well, another thing he said that I worked really, really hard to be, his advocate was, just as he shared, and he was the architect of what they did for me, and I'm fully aware of that. And again, I'm not going to tell you all they did because it was over the top. He architected that. What I was the architect of was making sure he knew, Sean, here's what you're going to get paid. Here's all the whatever elements of your package. Here's what they are. Here's what the church is going to do for you. I will set all that up on my credibility. And you won't, what we tell you we're going to do, this is what's going to happen. So you don't need to get here and go, well, maybe need to negotiate this around, he knew exactly what he was walking into. And honestly, it was a good gig. I mean, it was a
Yeah.
good gig. I,
Yeah.
I knew somebody who's going to get my gig is going to benefit greatly because they were so good to me. And I'm talking about through all the years.
Mhm.
But I've made sure that they were good to him. And I did that because, it sometimes in my past has not been that clear, and you kind of get in, and I won't go into that right now, but just kind of go, we'll figure it out when we get there. And I don't want to be on the end of that anymore.
Right. Let me ask you guys about this because there's obviously everybody thinks about a succession timeline. They think about dates, they think about responsibilities, they think about the package they're offered, all those kind of things. What we fail to think about is, Cal, you've had 38 years of relationships, and obviously some of those people come and go. Some have gone on to glory, but there's some people that, okay, now, yeah, we have seven elders, but this is the one with the loudest voice. Or here's the guy in the church that you can go to when, you really need something fixed. Or there's these, high level leaders that aren't necessarily on the org chart or even in the eldership. How did you pass off some of those relationships rather than just all the authority? Does that make sense?
Well, one of the things I did, which again is a joy to me today, is I told Sean, about a number of people, and I said, Sean, you're going to love these people. You're going to
Mm.
love these people. And I gave him a heads up on here's some guys that I would invest deeply in. Here's some people that have been, as you know, the movers and the shakers, the ones that make things happen. And then I went to them, and I was almost like a matchmaker,
Hmm.
where it's kind of
That's
like,
good.
you're going to love Sean. And then, so, I did what I could to facilitate the, seminal beginnings of relationships. And it's fascinating to me. It is fascinating to me because we have a lot of now very good mutual friends that I've been friends with forever, but Sean stepped in because I said, you're going to love this guy. And they become really, really good friends. And one of the things I've said all along is it doesn't threaten me. It's not like, yeah, that's my friend, you stay away from him. But I do feel like I tried really hard to grease the skids to make that happen. The other thing I did was with the staff and with the exec team, I just really tried to explain to them, I don't want you threatened by my leaving.
Mm.
I don't want you to be threatened. I'm going to bring you into the conversations. Once the board had allowed me to pursue Sean, I brought Sean in. Sean, I don't remember, but on several occasions, he came and he met with the exec team and we're at my house. We just did different things where it's like, guys, I need you to weigh in on this. If you're like going, there's no way it will be the end of my life if this guy comes. I would weigh into that with the board. I would go, I'm not sure this is a good thing, but obviously it worked. He came, and I just don't know how to tell you. I love this new role in my life. I love this era of my life, but I tell people all the time, I can only love this because he's doing well. If
Mm.
he were not doing well, I would not enjoy this feeling like I, number one, misled the church, failed to lead the church, or sit around going, well, gosh, I'm sure glad they still need me.
Hmm.
I don't, that's not healthy. So I did everything I could do to set him up and literally, give the push. Here, this is good to go. And again, a lot of communication of information. Here's who you need to be aware of. That's another whole other part. Keep your eyes open to this guy and keep aware.
Yeah.
But
That's
anyway,
right.
um, I just feel like facilitating, just helping and diffusing fear. People are so afraid of, well, what's going to happen?
I think Rusty, transferred trust is a big deal. And it's, I didn't realize, like, I do think, Kyle, we've talked about this a lot, that I think 80% of the success of what you do as an incoming person is actually dependent on the outgoing guy. Like, I
Mm.
think it's just, there's so much that's set up there with what you're saying of how you transfer trust to me. And he did that in the right ways, and he stayed away from the wrong ways. And meaning the wrong ways, he didn't promise. Was very disciplined to not promise anything to anybody
Mm.
coming in, that I was going to have to live with some promise or break a promise to a staff member or to someone about a role they were going to have or influence they would have with me. He was just so straightforward with everyone of, Sean's going to be making these decisions, but understand, I trust Sean. Like, this is a guy that I
Yeah.
believe in, that I know, and here's how I know him throughout the years. Here's what he's done. And so he would stand on the stage, and there were times, you know how you talk about how vision leaks, and sometimes when we're casting vision over and over and over again, we're about to puke how many times we've said it, right? He got up there and it just was consistent, constantly. Here's the dates, here's why, here's how, and here's who. And not just about
Yeah.
me, he did that about my wife. And
Hmm.
Lisa was so fantastic. I mean, she just got to know Jen, and then just would talk about Jen and encourage people about Jen. I mean, if I tripped and fell in this thing, it was all because of me. It's not because it was not handed off, and the transfer of trust. Alan did a phenomenal job at that too. Alan had lines because we were in a difficult situation there, and people were questioning, hey, what's going on and where are we going to be? And he did two things. He would stand up there, and when people would come to him with complaints or frustrations, he would look at them and say, do you trust me? And they would say yes, because he'd been there for 29 years, founding pastor of the church. And he says, well, you need to understand, I trust Sean. And he'd
Hmm.
get up and he would tell stories like, we had a disaster come into town, it was a flood, and Samaritan's Purse comes in, and we're standing next to each other signing up. Our church is we're going in, cleaning out hundreds of homes, and we got volunteers. And it's got this place on the application that says, who's your pastor? And Alan looks at me and he's like, I guess you're my pastor. And and then to him, that was such a big deal. And he would just communicate to everybody. The other thing he did is he went, because we were in a tough financial position, and the year before I left, one person handled 10% of the entire budget, or the year before I
Mm,
came, yeah, before
mhm.
he left. And then there was our top five. It was, I was just so overweighted. And he just went to all of them. And I just said, Alan, I'm not coming with the debt we have, the amount of people we have, unless those people are committed. And he went to them and said, would you give me a 2-year commitment? And I trust this guy and I'm going to be here. And then he stayed through. And I do laugh because Cal comes on Thursday night, and that's when he and Lisa come. Alan was in the lobby every service, every time the doors were open, welcoming people. But I think actually at that church, where they were, it was needed for a while. And he just kept transferring trust, and it was
Mhm.
good. Cal is like, they set it up, it was healthy, and man, he's been able to let go of the reins and let the team, and it's been really good. But transfer trust is a real deal. It's a big thing.
Yeah,
That's
Rusty,
yeah, go
Rusty, can
ahead,
I
Cal.
throw one more thing in here that I think goes back a little bit? Um, One of the things that I think helped make this happen was when he came on, there was a 1 year, and I think you've picked this up, there was a 1 year transition period, which again was very clear from the beginning. But just, as you go through that year, it, helping your staff, it gave them time to make an adjustment, time to see him, not to, time for him to not come in and immediately have to start exerting power and, making decisions. And I just think that was really, really healthy. And one of the things, again, to his credit, when I asked him to come on, and again, I think this is a relevant point. I said, Sean, I need you to understand, if you come on, we cannot set this up as co-senior pastors.
Yeah.
I have never done that in my life. I don't know how to do that, and I'm really not motivated to learn on my way out the door. And so I said, Sean, if you trust me, then come work for me. Work for me for a year. You'll understand how I do things. You'll see the system. You'll understand the culture. And if you can do that, which again took some humility on his part, having been the leader of the church, but it was he knew and I knew, at the end of the day, if we have a difference of opinion, I have a bigger bat, and I'm going to make the call. And we never had any conflict. There was no issue. But I think all of that matters. Where he he didn't have to come in and just immediately start, I'm changing this, I'm changing that. He got time to look at it and go, you know what? In time, I'm going to change this. In time, I'm going to modify that. It was part of what made it healthy.
Let me ask about change because, the old idea, there's two ideas, I guess I should say. One is don't change anything for at least a year. And the other thing is change something quick to let everybody know there's a new sheriff in town. So, you'd been there a year, you'd seen things you probably wanted to tweak. You wanted to change the music from Maranatha to Chris Tomlin or something like that. But
It's gone downhill
ever since that,
ever since then.
what did you? I'm sure because you're a strategic thinker. What were some of the things you thought? Okay, I'm going to do this in the first 90 days. I'm going to wait 180 for this, and this one I am going to wait a year. Were there some little tweaks that you made that just said, "Hey, there is a new day and there is a new vision"?
Yeah, I think, doing this at 49, coming in at 49, even just looking at what Cal said about the 12 months, I don't know if at 37, when I did this before, I would have agreed to the year, but I think I would have been prideful enough as a young guy to be like, a year. I, but at 49, I was like, man, we have 5 campuses. It's twice the size of an organization. It's going to take me longer to get to know the culture of this place. And so it was great to have that time frame. I think for me, there's a little bit of both. So I'm not trying to avoid your question, but there's a little bit of both. There were some things behind the scenes that I felt like we could immediately, and I always asked, I said, Cal, will you allow me to lean into the worship service a little bit? How we communicate, how we promote things, just the flow of the worship service and what we do. And he's like, yeah, this is going to be yours. So lean in, but it was always make sure no surprises. Let me know what you're doing, and
Mm.
always did that. So I leaned in behind the scenes, and people started seeing subtle shifts in that. There were some things staff wise, not in that year, but potentially right after, that there was one moment in one staff situation where I felt like I had to make a decision that was going to let the staff, if I didn't make a decision, the staff were going to question my leadership, but it was
Mm.
going to be a marker moment that was going to settle for them. Okay, he's the guy. And that
Mm.
happened last fall, and it's gone well, and things have turned out well. And I don't want to go into that situation, but I just would say early on, I think at Rocky, I was so intent on putting my mark on the place and so intent on putting my vision of what I felt like this big responsibility to got to put a vision into this thing. But the church was not ready for that. Like we were
Mm.
not healthy enough and we didn't have the right people in the right places. I remember we did this whole marketing campaign. We changed our vision, our values, our mission statement. And we thought we were going to launch this big old vision. And we did. And the people did not respond.
Mm.
And then all of a sudden there was some things that happened about 4 years into my time frame there that happened to me, and it had some things to do with my marriage and us getting healthier, me getting healthier as a person. And I remember sitting in an exec team meeting, and I was getting counseling for some things going on in my life, relationally and spiritually. And then for some reason we were applying that to kind of our team. And all of a sudden one of our staff members looked at me and he said, "Hey, keep doing that health stuff you're doing, the counseling and all that, and keep applying it to our team. Because if you notice, we're getting healthier and we're starting to grow.
Hmm.
And our church is growing. We're not just growing as a team, but our church is growing numerically. We're seeing more people come to Christ. We are getting healthier. There was a stage at that church where we needed to work on health before we worked on vision and growth for the next stage.
Right.
At this situation, Central was already healthy. And so we've been moving some people into the right spots. We shifted our entire structure of how we do multi-site because there was a difference in maybe philosophically of how I looked at that. Neither one are right or wrong of being central service focused or being more campus led. And we've shifted to a little bit more campus led, something I just believe
Mm.
in. But it's
Yeah.
taken time and this next year in 2027. So I will have been here 2.5 years before we launch any vision to say, hey, here's the next 10 years of where we're going, next 5 to 10 years of where we're going and what we're doing.
Mm.
So I don't know, Rusty, if I answered your question,
No, that's a great answer. Yeah, it's very helpful.
but I think looking back, it's like the situation, what does the place need?
Right.
And this is a different situation. So
One other element of that though too, I want to clarify, and Rusty, I know you've heard my Mount Everest illustration of,
Hmm.
through ways to die on Everest, on the way up, on the top, on the way down. Most people die on the way down because they spent way too much time on the top. That's the punch. But during that year, uh, as time passed, I was coming down from the leadership summit. He was ascending the summit, and so it was a matter of take these things. If you want to start making these changes, make them. I know they're coming. I know they're coming. And so we don't need to wait. You're going to have you're going to have the authority to change whatever you want to change. So let's make this, and it, and then there was that one, what we call our lead team retreat, where I was only there for a fraction of the time. I still have probably, I don't remember, 2 months, 3 months, something like that. And it's like I did this first part, and then it's like, Sean, uh, get moved to the future. And so I left the retreat, which was really weird. It was really weird. And yet again, so the point being that he took on more and more, I took on less and less. So even the year was not like 1 year of me just being, I'm in charge, and the next day I'm not.
Mm.
And what I aimed for was, I want the day after I leave to be no different than the day before I leave in terms of how the church is functioning. And I think it worked.
Let me ask just some real, kind of in the weeds questions. Cal, how long were you gone before you returned to just attending church there?
Yeah. We worked all that out in advance, and it was 6 months. And in fact, I think I came back to preach after 6 months. I think
Okay.
that was I'm allowed back now.
came back and on
And
your
I but
first
I told but I
weekend, tell
but
them
I
what your
told the
first
church
weekend was.
very clearly, look, I'm going to be gone. I'm not leaving. I'm not pitching a fit. I'm not angry, but we're going to give Sean lots of latitude to without anyone being able to say anything. I'm nowhere near. And then I'd come back and he already said this. I'm a member of Central. I attend Central, and I don't attend all weekend services anymore.
So Rusty, get this.
One,
I'm in Kenya. He's coming back for his first weekend back. I'm right on this, gal, right? His first weekend
yeah,
back,
yeah,
and guess which weekend that is? It was the weekend Charlie Kirk had been assassinated on Wednesday.
Oh
I'm
my,
out. I'm in
yes.
Kenya, and he has to preach that weekend, which
yeah.
actually ended up being an incredible. If you think about you being out of the country and not being able to handle that, and your campus pastors or whoever to have Cal back and him handle that, and then say, "I'm going to
Mm.
come back and address it the next week," was incredible. But
Your senior exec pastor was with you.
yeah,
I'm just like, what in the world? It's like, this is why I don't want to be a lead pastor. I don't want to have to address these issues anymore.
Yeah.
He's a kid, and I'm telling him, I'm calling him going, okay, look, Sean, you're just going to have to trust me. I've never seen anything like this reaction. I can't just preach a message and not acknowledge this. I'm not going to be the senior pastor. I'm not going to present myself, but I'm going to say some things about this to mitigate like, I can't believe you didn't even talk about it, but I did make it really clear. It was not my role.
Yeah.
And then I preached a sermon that had absolutely nothing to do with what happened in the country.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guys, I
I think
prepared
that's
this.
I think it's really critical. He got up there, and I think it shows the heart. He got up there and said, "Hey, here's where Sean is. Obviously, there's a lot that's been going on in the world." He spoke to it for a couple minutes, and then he said, "But I'm not
Yeah.
your senior pastor. Sean's your senior pastor, and he's going to come back and speak to that next week." And I think that's a big deal, just even reinforcing. And Rusty, I don't know. My experience with the two guys I transitioned with have not been the same experience that I've seen so many people of them just
Mhm.
having this heart for the church to succeed, for me to succeed, for the board to be healthy, for the staff. Some guys are like, well, if it goes bad, at least I look good. And
Yeah.
he did not have that, and everything has been just and the church, it's so interesting how much the church feels set and still feels when Cal comes back in. His first weekend back, we had our largest attendance that we'd had since Easter that year. And I'm like,
Nothing to do with Charlie
great,
Kirk.
thanks.
Nothing to do with Charlie Kirk.
No,
It had everything to do with Charlie Kirk.
yeah, well, but the second time you came back, we had a bump in attendance too, because there's just so much health, and then they see the connection that we have, and it just
Right.
creates this stability of people are just like, wow, this is neat. This doesn't always happen. And so I've been blessed. Not every guy's been blessed by that. You have to do your part. Like I've had to do my part in both places and lead well. But and I've just been blessed. And I think it's not just a blessing to the guy who comes in. It is the blessing for not just this generation of the church, but the next generation of the church.
Mm,
Because I think a
that's well
transition that
said.
goes poorly can set a church back for 15 years.
Yes, definitely. We've certainly seen that. How many times, Cal, are you preaching at Central? How many times a year are you preaching somewhere else? How many weekends are you busy?
One of the things that I think I'm different than a lot of guys. So I retired at 69, so I'm now 70, and I didn't retire. I retired with the sense of uh, I have fulfilled the role God's called me to fulfill, meaning that a lot of my peers retire earlier and then they look to go do the next thing. I'm not doing that. I just feel like I preach when I'm asked. I preach where I'm asked. I speak at things I'm asked to speak at. The way I say it is, I'm just not hustling anything. I'm not trying to fill my days with preaching. Uh, I just take whatever comes. And also, and again, candidly, if I feel in my spirit, I want to do that. I don't just
Mm,
agree to do things I don't want to be overwhelmed and busy. So I think I've preached twice at Central. He's got me two times in the next couple months. I think, and again, those are all part of the agreement. But Sean, you don't have to have me preach at Central. That's not in this agreement. If you want me to, I will. The thing I always said to him was, look, I can't, I'm not going to deny that I want to be wanted, but I don't want to need to be needed. And so don't do this just as some token. I want to be wanted. And if I can make a difference and I can contribute, I will. So I'm not sitting around like, come on, man, It's been It's when I'm asked, I respond.
That's awesome.
Got it. Rusty, the way we did is we scheduled that it'd be quarterly. So he'd preach 4 times a year
Okay.
and looking at
Yep.
that next year too and working through. Done a great job. Every time he's come back, people have loved it. It's been awesome.
Do you let him know ahead of time he's coming?
Yeah. Yeah, so we've got the dates for July and then August.
Let me know or let the church
No,
know?
let the church know.
Yeah, yeah, we
Okay.
have. We have, and I mean, I think that's neat. You let the church know, and that time we did it in November, man, it was great to see just the attendance bump and people being there and excited, and it's
Mm.
just really healthy. So
Mm.
it's been
That's
good.
awesome. Wow. Well, Cal, it's got to be like, the old days when you were the youth pastor and you got those coveted Sundays, like the Sunday after Thanksgiving, the first Sunday of the year, Sunday of Labor Day, and now you get it again. This is great.
Again, and this is straight up as honest as I am, as honest as I'm capable of being. Um, I am thoroughly enjoying this new stage of my life, and I feel like again, Sean's doing fantastic. The church is doing fantastic. I just feel free to
Mm.
live life, and again, I very much feel like I'm in the ministry. I'm still involved in people's lives. I'm still doing different things, but I just it's like this is a fantastic era of life. And
Mhm.
Sean and I were in a this group that we've been involved with for many years. We were together a couple of weeks ago, and one of the guys was talking about, because they're all younger. There's a group of younger guys. One of them was talking about they finally reached the stage of an empty nest, and they made the statement I thought was so interesting. They said, it's really weird. I come home and there's nobody there, and there's no friends coming over with my kids, and it's quiet, and it's not bad. It's not bad. It's just so different. And I heard that and I said, that is retirement.
Mhm.
That is retirement. I come home and I don't have a big old long list of things. I don't live by deadlines. And if I don't mow the yard today, I'll mow it tomorrow. And it's still going to be there, and it's going to, it's not, nothing is, hanging in the balance on whether I mow my yard today or tomorrow. And I've just, I don't know. I am not hurting or suffering in this era of my life. The only challenge that I'm dealing with is my wife has literally an international ministry, and she is like flying the highest she's ever flown in her life with opportunities and responsibilities, and she's out of the country a lot. And I'm like going, hey, wait a minute. But the truth is, I don't want to do that. And I've been offered other positions and places, and so that's not what I want to do. So, hey,
Yeah.
honey, we'll see
Good
you
for
when
you.
you land.
Good for you. Well, guys, so many people get this wrong. And it's such a blessing to hear when people get it right. And Sean, for you to celebrate and have a great relationship with your predecessor now on 2 occasions speaks highly of you. And Cal, for you to celebrate the success of Central and Sean speaks highly of you. And what guys have to remember is when your church does well after you leave, actually says more about your leadership and actually says that you set them up well. So Cal, I'm glad that you've embraced that as opposed to being threatened by it. I remember Wayne Smith after he retired. Cal, Wayne, or knew Wayne. Mike Bro took over, jumped by 1,500 people in 1 week, 2,000 the next week. And Wayne said, you couldn't have one down Sunday? But he loved it. He was celebrating it, and just being able to see that is just fantastic. So guys, I so appreciate this. This is going to bless a lot of pastors out there. Thank you for sharing some of the things that you learned along the way, and for just taking the time to be with me.
It's
Honored,
good, man. Thanks for having us.
asking.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Simple Succession. If today's conversation reminded you that succession is closer than you think, I'd love to give you a free resource. I've not only studied succession, I've lived it. And I've gathered some of the most important lessons I've learned from following 2 legendary pastors into a short guide called I Followed 2 Legends, 6 Succession Lessons I Learned the Hard Way. Along with that guide, we're going to give you a succession readiness assessment to help you discover where your church stands today. Just go to PastorRustyGeorge.com to get your free resources. Whether you're preparing to hand off leadership, receive leadership, or simply start planning for the future, these resources will help you take your next step with confidence. Until next time, remember, succession isn't about filling big shoes. It's about faithfully walking in the ones God gave you.